She vanished when you needed her most, ghosted you, ignored you, acted like you never existed. But the moment you stop thinking about her, the second your focus turns inward and your value skyrockets without even trying, suddenly she reappears. A "Hey stranger" text, a random like on your story, maybe a voice note with her old flirty tone. Why now? Why not when you were breaking? Let me tell you something hard, something very true. She didn't come back because she realized your worth. She came back because she felt your absence. Comment below. I reclaim my power if you know it's time to rise. This message is for every man who's ever begged for closure, who spiraled in silence when she moved on like you never mattered, who stayed loyal to someone who walked away without looking back. Today, you reclaim your power. But I won't sugarcoat it. If you're looking for comfort, this ain't it. If you want transformation, raw, direct, and backed by ancient Stoic truths, then keep watching. This might be the most important video of your life. Because right now, a silent war is being waged on your self-worth. And most men lose without even realizing. Men today face a battlefield they weren't trained for. You were raised to please, to chase, to prove your worth through sacrifice. And when a woman walks away, you're told to wait, hope, or work on yourself. Just enough to be chosen again. Enough. It's time for you to become the man who doesn't need to be chosen, because he chose himself. Number 1, why she returns after you detach. She comes back because your withdrawal becomes a spotlight on the emptiness she tried to distract herself from. Because when you stop showing up, when your name stops lighting up her screen, when your validation, your attention, your energy becomes unavailable, she has to finally sit in silence with the reality she tried to avoid, that what she thought was replaceable cannot be replicated, not by swiping, not by texting old flings, not by weekend parties, not even by chasing the dopamine of superficial affection, because none of it replaces the consistency of a man who once chose her completely. And when you detach, not just physically, but emotionally, when you stop reacting, stop wondering, stop needing, and you anchor yourself in purpose and in progress, she doesn't feel nostalgia, she feels threat, because your disinterest becomes evidence that her grip failed. And in a world where control matters more than commitment, she isn't mourning love lost. She's panicking over power lost, because women don't regret losing men they didn't love. They regret losing control over men they thought would never change. And when your energy disappears, when you start saying no more than you say yes, when you move slower, reply less, focus deeper, build harder, her old assumptions crumble. She never expected you to rewrite the script, never expected you to not just walk away, but level up while she was watching from the sidelines. And now she comes back, not with apology, but with softness, pretending nothing happened, pretending you're still that same man who once waited for her attention like it was oxygen. But now you breathe without her. Now your days aren't planned around hoping she calls. Now your nights are built around building your life. And that scares her, because the man who no longer needs her is the man she suddenly wants. And not out of love, but out of scarcity. Because when women feel the loss of a man they once controlled, they try to reopen the door through nostalgia, by bringing up old memories, playing victim, using tone and timing. But now you see through it. Now you recognize patterns instead of promises. And the more you grow, the less her return excites you, and the more it reveals that everything she's offering is a rerun of the same dynamic you broke free from. And now, your job is not to decode her texts, but to decode yourself, to continue creating a life that doesn't flinch when old energy tries to return wearing new makeup. Because when a woman returns after detachment, your responsibility isn't to entertain her curiosity. It's to protect your progress And that means saying no with clarity, with poise, with silence that speaks louder than arguments. Because your peace now isn't a gift for others to interrupt. It's your new standard. And the most powerful move you'll ever make is to keep walking when everything in your past tries to convince you to turn back. Because the truth is, she doesn't return out of guilt. She returns out of curiosity, ego, and entitlement. And most men fall for it because deep down, they still want closure. They still want to be chosen. They still want to believe that maybe now she sees their value. But you need to understand this. Closure is a fantasy. Her return is not proof of her growth. It's proof that you've become less accessible, and that's what really attracts her back. Not your emotional depth, not your effort, not your evolution, but your new scarcity. And in a culture where validation is abundant but genuine connection is rare, your detachment becomes gold. She starts panicking, not because she wants to commit, but because she doesn't want you to give your new energy to someone else. And this is where most men crumble. They hear, "I miss you," and forget every dry reply, every ignored call, every emotional cliff they were left hanging on. They walk back into the same script with the same woman, hoping for a different ending. But if you've done the work, if you've built clarity, not just muscles, then you must see her return for what it is. A test, not a second chance. This is the moment where your boundaries speak louder than your words, where your no becomes a shield, where your silence isn't empty, it's structured. Real growth is when you can stand in front of the person who once had emotional power over you and feel nothing but clarity. When you can remember the pain and choose peace anyway. When you finally say, "That chapter's closed, and I'm not rewriting it." If you're serious about change, not just in love, but in every corner of your life, then act like it. Write down your goals and break them into steps. Go to bed earlier, delete her number and every breadcrumb she left. Block her if needed. Leave group chats where her name pops up. Cut out every woman who manipulates your time and attention, and feed the version of you that scares her, the man who values purpose more than validation. Because when she comes back, it's not to complete the story. It's to interrupt the one you've just started writing. Number 2, you're not the same man anymore. You are not that man anymore. The one who waited around for her to decide if you were good enough. The one who checked his phone 20 times an hour. The one who sacrificed his dignity for a reply. The one who convinced himself that love had to feel like anxiety and guessing games. Because now you understand something most men never wake up to. That love without respect is manipulation. That affection without consistency is emotional bait. That validation from someone who couldn't honor your presence is the cheapest drug in the world. And the withdrawal from that drug was painful. Yes, but it taught you something real. That your time, your energy, your focus are not for rent, they are investments. And now you invest them with intention. You protect your mind the way a king protects his gates. You stopped following women who sell fantasy and started building a life that's grounded in reality, not reaction. And this didn't come from some overnight decision. This came from sitting with the pain long enough to realize that she wasn't worth the emotional overdraft fees, that no woman is worth the cost of self-betrayal, that love isn't something you chase. It's something you allow to enter the life you've already built for yourself. And that's what changed. You're no longer a man seeking completion. You are a man seeking direction, and your direction isn't backwards. It isn't about making her see your worth. It's about making yourself impossible to ignore because your habits, your results, your structure, your posture, your discipline speak for you. And now you walk into rooms differently. You take longer to reply because you actually have a schedule now. You say no more often than yes, because you've learned that every yes is a commitment of your energy. You lift because a strong body commands respect, not from others, From your own mind, you plan your day the night before because aimlessness is a trap. You eat with discipline because short-term pleasure is the enemy of long-term confidence. You read daily because clarity is a weapon. And your voice sounds different now because it's rooted in self-respect, not desperation. And yes, people notice, women notice, she notices, and it confuses her, maybe even frustrates her, because the version of you she knew no longer exists, and the version that stands in front of her now doesn't need her, doesn't seek her, doesn't ask her for access. He grants it selectively, and that's what separates boys from men. Standards, and now yours, are unshakable, not out of pride but out of principle. Because you no longer give people the version of yourself that bends to be loved. You give them the version that stands firm, even if it stands alone. Because now your self-worth isn't negotiable. It's built through repetition, solitude, rejection, discomfort, and decision. And every time you didn't text her, every moment you chose to hit the gym instead of stalking her socials, every time you closed your phone at night instead of rereading old messages, you were building something most men never do, a backbone, and it's showing in the way you speak, the way you walk, the way you look in the mirror without flinching, because you no longer see yourself through her eyes. You see yourself through the eyes of the man you promised to become. And that shift changes everything. It changes the kind of friends you tolerate, the conversations you entertain, the energy you allow into your space, because you know what it cost you to get here, and you're not about to gamble that for another round of emotional roulette. So you double down on discipline. And that means no more begging for someone's attention, no more lowering your standards just to avoid loneliness, no more allowing women back into your life just because they miss the old version of you they could control. Because you're not a man chasing love anymore. You're a man chasing impact, and impact requires sacrifice. It means giving up the comfort of familiarity for the discomfort of greatness, and most men won't do it. But you are not most men because you've already died once. When she left, when you hit rock bottom, when you realized nobody was coming to rescue you. And that version of you, the needy version, the soft version, the confused version, he's gone now. And this new man, you, is operating on clarity, simplicity, and standards. And from this point forward, every decision you make should scream, I value my time. Because when a man truly understands his value, he doesn't ask to be chosen. He chooses where he invests. And right now, it better be your goals, your body, your purpose, and your future. Number 3. The growth she didn't expect. What she never expected, what most women never see coming, is the kind of growth a man undergoes when he's finally forced to sit in the wreckage of what he thought was love, and realizes that everything he built his identity on was borrowed from a woman who was never truly invested in him. And that kind of awakening doesn't create bitterness. It creates fire, direction, and discipline that no longer revolves around attraction, but around becoming untouchable. And what she didn't expect was that you'd stop waiting for her to change, and instead you'd start changing everything about yourself. Your finances, your circle, your daily rituals, your late-night thoughts, your diet, your sleep schedule, your boundaries, your goals. Not because she left, but because her leaving revealed just how far from your true self you had drifted. And this growth is quiet, methodical, relentless, because now your motivation isn't rooted in proving her wrong. It's rooted in proving to yourself that you were never meant to be the version of you that begged, chased, compromised, explained, and tolerated. And so you began rebuilding not as a man who wants to be loved, but as a man who is building something worth protecting, something too stable to be shaken by emotional breadcrumbs. And the shift is terrifying to her because now when she looks at you, she doesn't see the predictable, passive, emotionally available man she used to manipulate with silence and intimacy. Now she sees someone with a schedule, someone who's unreadable, unavailable, unimpressed. And what she never calculated is that your greatest transformation wouldn't come from healing her absence. It would come from replacing your need for her presence with purpose, clarity, and standards. And those standards are visible now. In the way you walk into a room without explaining your worth, in the way you say no without guilt, in the way you laugh less but mean it more, in the way you prioritize sleep over scrolling, books over arguments, and solitude over drama. And she didn't expect that every time she checks in, she feels more distance, because what once was a man orbiting her gravity is now a man flying on trajectory she no longer understands. And this growth isn't linear, it's layered. You didn't just hit the gym, you hit rock bottom and built scaffolding under your soul, and every day you chose purpose over pain. She lost a little more access to you. And the irony is that she can't even articulate why she feels drawn to you again. She calls it chemistry. She says she misses you. But what she really misses is the control, the certainty, the comfort of knowing you would always answer, always wait, always fall for the same tricks. And now, you've changed the locks, not just to your apartment, but to your attention. And that terrifies her because deep down she knows this new version of you is not for her. It's for the mission, for the man you are becoming, and for the world you are going to impact once you stop wasting time revisiting what broke you and start obsessing over what builds you. And that is the growth she didn't expect, because she never thought the man who needed her would become the man she can't reach. And the hardest truth you'll have to accept, the one most men avoid, is that you didn't need her to break you. You needed her to leave so you'd finally stop betraying yourself. Because you never really grew when she was around. You adjusted, you adapted, you tolerated, and you called it love. But real growth began the moment you stopped waking up with hope for her text and started waking up with a plan, because nothing is more powerful than a man with a plan. And she never saw that version of you, the version that wakes up before sunrise not to impress, but to execute. That goes to the gym, not to attract, but to prepare. That reads, not to escape, but to sharpen. That stacks wins instead of excuses. And now she's looking at you from a distance, trying to gauge if the door is still open, not realizing that the man she's trying to reconnect with doesn't even exist anymore, because your growth didn't just remove her. It replaced your entire identity. It forced you to rebuild from rubble, from silence, from rejection, from absence. And that rebuild produced something she never encountered before, a man immune to her pull. And that immunity isn't bitterness, it's resolve. It's that you've tasted peace, and now chaos doesn't impress you. Attention doesn't excite you. Apologies don't convince you, because you're no longer interested in what feels good temporarily. You're focused on what endures, and that's why your growth unsettles her. Because she can no longer access you through guilt, through softness, through memories, through old jokes, through hints and subtleties, because now you speak in actions, and your absence is louder than any love letter. And the moment you chose to stop negotiating your value and start refining it, she lost her old seat at the table, not out of spite, but because you outgrew the room she used to belong to. Number 4, level up without her. Leveling up without her doesn't just mean moving on. It means moving beyond the version of yourself that ever needed her approval to feel whole. It means redefining what success means to you on your terms, not through a lens shaped by her preferences, her reactions, or her absence. And this level up starts when you stop trying to repair a bond that was built on your sacrifice and maintained by your silence, because the truth most men will never admit is that they didn't love her. They were addicted to the identity they constructed around being wanted. And when she walked away, it wasn't just her they lost. It was the story they told themselves about what made them valuable. But when you truly level up, you stop building stories and you start building systems. And one of the most powerful systems you can build is the ability to master your own focus. Not just to be busy, but to be intentional, to know what your calendar looks like next week, to know where your money is going before you spend it, to stop using your free time for escape and start using it for elevation, because that's where the real separation begins. When your environment, your attention span, your digital habits, and your decision-making all start reflecting one truth, that she no longer holds emotional currency in your life. And to make that shift real, you need to eliminate every weak access point in your routine. Block the unnecessary notifications. Unfollow the content that keeps you mentally hooked on past dynamics. Stop explaining your growth to people who are still living in circles. Create a weekly self-accountability check where you ask yourself what progress was made, and if the answer is none, then cancel every social hangout that week and build until the silence becomes productive, not punishing, because this isn't about healing anymore. It's about sharpening, about turning the version of you who once needed permission into the version of you who gives himself direction, and direction means structure. Not just waking up early, but knowing what to do when you wake up. Not just journaling, but writing the 3 things you avoid the most and tackling them first. Not just saving money, but setting a date to learn a high-income skill that makes your existence more valuable than her return could ever offer. Because true level up isn't visible on your social media. It's visible in the way you make decisions when nobody's watching, in how quickly you say no to invitations that don't match your future, in how you build your discipline like a fortress where not even your old self gets to stay. And the day she texts again, and she will, your response won't be cruel, it'll be absent, because the man you've become no longer measures progress by how many women are interested, but by how rarely he compromises. And in that moment, you won't feel pride or anger, you'll feel peace. Because the greatest revenge is no longer being accessible to people who only remember your value once it stops serving them. And once you reach this point, where your actions are no longer dictated by reactions, where your life has rhythms instead of emotional spikes, where your goals are built on process instead of people, you realize that the level up is not about being seen, it's about being centered in your values, in your vision, in your standards. And this is where the real transformation begins. When you delete numbers, not out of pettiness, but out of precision. When you decline messages not because you're bitter, but because you're busy with purpose. When you restructure your day not for productivity hacks, but because clarity deserves structure. And now your conversations change. You don't talk about relationships that broke you. You talk about systems that build you. You don't explain to your old circle why you've disappeared. You let your progress speak for itself, because at this level, you don't chase connection. You attract alignment. And that means becoming unavailable to any dynamic that requires you to shrink, bend, chase, or dilute who you are just to be liked. And the only way to lock this in is by making your life too big to revisit smallness. Audit your past week. Eliminate the habits that came from a version of you she used to manipulate. Replace mindless scrolling with learning something that scares you. Build relationships with men who don't flinch when you talk about ambition. Install a nighttime review where you list 3 things you did today that your future self would thank you for. And if you didn't, then that night is a lesson, not a failure. And this process builds you into a man who doesn't need reminders that she's watching, because he's too busy becoming the kind of man she can't reach. Not because he's hiding, but because he's evolved beyond recognition. And if you're still here, it means you're not like the rest. You're done playing small, done tolerating half-love, done shrinking yourself just to be noticed. And if this hits something deep inside you, don't let it stop here, because this moment right now can either become just another video you watched, or the beginning of the life she'll never be able to access again. So comment, "I chose discipline," to mark the shift. Then like this video and subscribe. Not for me, but for the thousands of men out there right now, still begging for breadcrumbs, still wasting years chasing validation from women who wouldn't even clap for their growth. And if you want to break the cycle permanently, the ebook that men are calling a wake-up call for the soul is linked in the comments. It's not going to be public forever because some truths are too real to be diluted. Get it now, not next week, because every second you delay this evolution, you risk staying stuck in a version of life you've already outgrown.